Dale here, the chapter goddess. I am a mom, author, blogger, freelancer, podcaster, producer, and overall creative. With this show, I really want to focus on creatives and bring their authentic self to life. How are they motivated to pursue their passions? What have been the struggles along the way? Does self-care play an important role in who they are today and how they connect with the creative flow? Bringing one's authentic self to the forefront is important in this world that we live in currently. Sharing your self-care, your tips, and how you stay on track for things without losing it completely is also important. Self-care is not talked about enough, and authenticity and self-care are what I like to highlight with my creatives, as well as getting to know them. So get ready for a fun and entertaining show. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get ready to meet this episode's guest. Hey guys, and welcome to today's show. I have a little bit of a change up for you guys today. My guest has not shown up yet, but I did want you guys to be hanging. Oh, and I think he's joining me late, so I may not have a change of plans. We'll see if he can get his camera working. But just a little bit of what's been going on in my life as of late, just kind of giving a couple more minutes here. Have you guys gotten yourself a copy of Deals in Blood yet? This is recently published, came out earlier this week. I have a story in it that was an emotional piece for me to write, and you guys do not want to miss it. You can get it wide and check it out. And I actually have a contest going on in my group. If you guys purchase it and post a screenshot of your purchase, you could enter it into a 25 gift card drawing. So and let's see if I can get my guest in here real quick. 2 seconds, guys. There we go. Hey, James.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for joining me. I was worried you weren't going to be able to make it.
No. I was going to make it. I didn't know my camera wasn't on.
Oh, no. Okay. I was like,
And I had to look for the email for the link, too. So, I had the email marked, and I had to scroll through 1,000 emails to get back to the one.
Gotta love the email box. Never can find anything when you need it. That's always the worst.
Well, I flagged you, so I was able just to scroll down to my 2 flags, and I started saying, there she goes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my email box is intimidating. Half the time I look at it and I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff there. And like, I try to unsubscribe, but it just keeps sending stuff. And I'm like, what the heck?
That's the biggest joke in town. Do not unsubscribe to anything, because then they know they have a live email and they're going to keep on sending you stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's like a never ending unsubscribe. Like it just, oh my gosh. But now that I've got you here, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about who you are and some of the books you write.
Okay. Well, my full name is James L. Hill, and I write underneath that name for sci-fi and fantasies. Mm-hmm. So I have a sci-fi book out called Pegasus, A Journey to New Eden, which is actually my first book I wrote. I started off as a sci-fi writer, writing short stories and things like that. And that was my first book I wrote way back in the 80s.
Oh, man.
And since then, I did some fantasy, and I started writing adult crime novels, which I write underneath the pen name of J. L. Hill. As you can see, I'm not very imaginative when it comes to the names.
Hey, it is tough to pick pen names. And for you guys watching, here are some of his books if you want to check them out. I have the link to his website in the description, so you guys can just click on over and pick out what you like. So what caused the shift from one genre to the other?
Well, actually, I like writing in different genres. So when I'm writing a book and I finish that book, I jump to another genre so that I can sort of like wipe the slate clean and start
Yeah.
all over again with fresh ideas. And especially when I'm writing series, because I don't
Mhm.
want the book to sound the same as the last one.
Yeah. That's a
So,
good
yeah.
idea.
So if I change genre completely,
Mhm.
then I have to write in a completely different manner and a completely different mindset. And so that's why I do it. And the idea of, I was writing sci-fi, but I was also very interested in writing crime stories and that type of story. So I finally finished the 4 stories in the Killer series.
Ooh.
Uh, so that one I finished last year,
Mhm.
and I had started a series in fantasies about mermaids. Well, basically, it's about mermaids, but the first book is about mermaids and pirates in the golden age of pirates. And
Ooh.
then we go through a whole history of mermaids and dragons and men and back and forth through history. So it's a historical fantasy. And I've been working on the last 2 books for like 3 years, I guess.
Yes, creativity takes time, and sometimes those ideas don't like to come out as fast as we like them, you know?
Yeah. And I get lazy. I have to say that I get lazy. Well, after I finished the Killer series,
Mhm.
I was drained. I couldn't write anything. I was like, okay, I'm going to jump back into my fantasy series now. And I have 2 more books that are halfway written. And I just opened up the pages, looked at them, and closed the book again, and opened up and
Yeah.
closed it again. Because after writing the Killer series, I was just kind of drained. That
Oh,
was 10 years worth of writing. And
man.
yeah,
So, the Killer series, how did you find the inspiration to get those stories going?
well, that's kind of like an homage to where I grew up at and the people I know. Uh, I grew up in the South Bronx in gang territory.
Ooh.
So, back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. And then I moved further north in the Bronx into mob territory.
Oh, man.
So the book is about the mob and gangs and that kind of a story. So it starts off with the 2 teenagers. One's the son of a mafia boss, and the other one's a gang leader. And they decide, well, the mafia boss, Nicky, decides that he's going to rob a money drop, a mafia money drop, because he thinks they're skimming money off of one of the families and makes some fair game for him to rob them. And so they get Mojo Morris Johnson, the gang leader who moved into the neighborhood,
Yeah.
and the new kid on the block, and so they get him to seduce the girl, the mob boss's daughter, because she likes him and everything. So they say, "You keep her
Ooh.
busy. We're going to sneak in and rob the place." And of course, nothing goes right,
Of
and
course.
and so everybody finds out about everything, and especially about Morris and the girl. And so it sparked a big mob war, and that's the beginning of the series. And you follow these two through their life,
Yeah.
yeah, as they
So,
become bigger and better criminals.
man, so they just get like worse and more involved then with everything?
Yes, because both of them, Morris and Nikki,
Mhm.
both want to be top-notch criminals. it's
Yeah.
Nicky's born into it because he's in a mob family, so
Yeah.
he wants to become the Godfather. And Morris uh, is a gang leader, so he just acquires more gangs by street rules. If I
Man.
win, you're part of my gang now. You know, join me or die type of deal. Type of deal.
Yeah.
Your pirate, you know, mentality. You either join the crew or we make you walk the plank.
Man. So does the like mob boss's daughter ever actually get with one of them then, or does she just become like insignificant as the story plays
Oh
out?
no, it's the whole thing with her and Morris and all these women. It's sort of like a James Bond if James Bond was a criminal rather than a spy.
Yeah.
So so the whole thing evolves, and there's family ties between them. Morris has a daughter with the girl, and so somebody kidnaps his daughter in the second book, and that brings him back to New York. To the host, most of the books is about revenge. These guys live for revenge.
Yes. So did you have to research anything in particular to help channel that emotion to create their characters?
It was kind of emotional for me anyway,
Mm-hmm.
because when you start thinking about this type of life and the people that you know, and like I said, I grew up in that neighborhood, and so you know some people who are great friends, terrible criminals, or are very criminally involved. I used to ride with a guy, uh, Pat, and he was the second or third in command to one of the mob bosses. I used to ride around in Paul Castellano's car after Big Paulie got shot and killed.
Oh man,
And
that's crazy.
And so Pat inherited the car, and I was riding around with him because we worked together in the bank of all places, and he would tell me all kinds of stories. I would hear all kinds of stories from him, and of course my friends who were what we call the junior mafia, their brothers and their uncles and everything was in the mob, and like I said, I hung out with them, and great friends, and everybody. There's a chapter in a book called 100 Friends. Yeah, and the reason for that is because we used to say in the Bronx, you have 100 friends who can get you into prison, but you don't have one with an idea that will get you out. So
that would make sense.
So you hang out with these guys, and everybody got a plan, and all you have to do is knock out the guard, And of course, that means you're the one that the guard's going to be able to finger and put in prison. So, that's the whole idea behind 100 Friends. You got 100 friends, everybody got a plan, especially in New York, everybody got a plan to make it big. And it's just a matter of how much time can you do?
So I'm going to shift us a little bit, and I'm going to take you to the fantasy portion of your brain.
Okay.
What was it like creating the worlds for your fantasy stories, your sci-fi and everything?
Oh, that's much more imaginative.
Yeah.
Sci-fi and fantasy really delves in. You really got to think outside the box. You got to picture what the world would be like if mermaids actually interacted with people. So in the fantasy story, I call it Tell, the Emerald Lady. The mermaids are sort of like manipulating the people, and interfering or guiding history. So it takes place in the golden age of piracy and during the Revolutionary War. Ooh. And it's because the daughter of the queen of the mermaids rescues this sailor, and the mother had deemed that the sailor should have drowned at sea. Oh. Because the daughter tried to rescue him, caused this accident, and she cursed them. She cursed them both.
Oh no!
So, you always have to have a good old curse in there. You know? So she cursed the daughter, Shira, that she would have to remain in human form, but she can't leave the water because they need the water to live. So she can't leave the water. Okay. And Jeremy, who happens to be the sailor that she rescues, said, that's okay. I'll make sure that she's happy and she won't want for anything. And the mom says, good, because as long as Shira's alive, you can't die. They're mentally bound to each other, physically and mentally bound. And so then the mother goes about torturing them.
Oh, she's very cruel. Wow.
Yes, she is. She is.
Not only am I going to curse you, I'm going to torture you for eternity.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And Jeremy finds out that mermaids live for 1,000 years.
Oh my gosh.
So he has a long time worth of this to go through. And see, you have to start thinking in terms of what would 1,000 years life be like?
Yeah.
How could you experience 1,000? Because you would go through quite a bit of stuff in 1,000 years. And then they have mental telepathy so that the mermaid can share their histories and their lives from one life to another. Because after all, if you're a mermaid, you spend most of your time underwater, you're not going to talk.
Yeah, it's true.
So you have to have another way of communicating. And so there's all sorts of ideas and different things that go into this whole world of the mermaids and a whole mythology behind it, because then somewhere in the middle of this thing, I decided there needed to be a dragon.
Oh, yes. So is it a sea dragon then, or like fire-breathing dragon? I'm curious. I like dragons, so...
Yeah, it's a fire-breathing dragon. It's the third of the three beings that are supposed to be in control of the earth. So it's men, the mermaids, and the dragons. And there's a whole mythology on how they all came into being. Don't you do it. I have a cat here who loves to jump in my lap when I'm at the desk.
Of course, it's never a good live show without an animal. I have a dog in here this time instead of a cat, and she's crashed out on the floor behind me. I'm just like, okay, don't like snore loud or anything. She normally is sleeping in the living room. So, but normally I have a cat that jumps up and just sits here and it's like, hey, Mom, I'm going to try to move the camera. And I'm like, no, you're not.
He's about to jump in my lap. I'm trying to give him too little a room for where he can jump in. Because if I were further away from the thing, he'd be able to get into my lap. Yeah. He's just looking like, come on.
Like, yes.
Just give me an inch. I'm going to jump right up there. And so then all you here he goes.
Yes. Oh, there's the tail. Yes. Did you find it easier to write the fantasy stories over the thrillers?
Easier wouldn't be the proper word for it.
Yeah.
I would think that because I had planned the thriller story, the Killer series, for a longer period of time, because I always planned it to be 4 books, so I had already laid it out in my mind what this book was going to be about. That was a little easier writing than the fantasy, because I started off with just the one idea, and then because it's 1,000 years and I started off with this history, I figured, oh, wait a second. Now we have to talk about why they are at war with the dragons and why the dragons are, dominating the world and all that kind of stuff. So it then became this whole thing where it started spreading out. Mm-hmm. And I like history, probably terrible at it, but I like history. So I started planning the stories to be of an age. So the first one is the age of pirates. The next one is going to go back in time to the age of castle buildings, right? Of castles. So that you can find out why the mermaids and the dragons hate each other and why they're at war most of the time. Cool. And then it comes back to the modern day. And so you get a little bit of a circle. You get bounced around in history. So we cover a good 2,000-3,000 years in time. So it's harder that way, because you start thinking, okay, well, I can't say this here because it's not going to make sense there.
Yeah. The overlap.
The overlap, and
that will always get you.
Yeah. When one story starts, did it start before the other story ended? Because that's not good.
Yeah.
Or after the other story ends, because now you have a gap in time, and can't have that happening.
For real. So with all of these different stories and everything, you mentioned that you start with a different genre to kind of give yourself a clean slate. Would you consider that kind of like a version of self-care? Do you do something else in self-care world to help keep yourself on track and going?
I do different things. Mm-hmm. I used to do fishing, but I bought a boat, so I don't do much fishing.
Yeah.
I do a lot more boat stuff, which is not really sailing either.
Yeah.
So mostly pouring money into the water is what I do.
Yeah, boats will do that, but it's so nice to go sit out in the middle of the water on them.
But you just sit out there and drink
Yeah, you can relax and it's
Yeah.
peaceful, nobody to bother you. Yes.
And that's what I do sometimes when I need a little self-help and a little clearing the mind, and I just need emptiness so I can think of storylines and things like that. And then I can go sit on the boat, and it's nice and peaceful. It's always a wonderful day on the boat.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. That's one thing I miss. My family used to have a boat and we would all go out on it. I don't get to do that anymore because I sold it, but like nothing compares to being out on the water to just calm your mind and kind of just ease up. So nice.
Yep. Life is very, very calm when you're
Yes.
sitting out there on the water.
Yes. So wonderful. So with these story ideas and everything, what do you think you're going to start working on? Actually, you mentioned you are working on something, right? So let's talk about that again, like revisit that.
Okay. So what I'm supposed to be working on is called the Ruby Cradle, which is the second book in the fantasy series. It's called the Gemstone series because you have the Emerald Lady, then you'll have the Ruby Cradle, and then you'll have the Diamond Warrior. So each gemstone. So the Ruby Cradle, like I said, takes you back to the age of castles. So after the fall of the Roman Empire, and if you know world history, you had the age of empires, which lasted up to pretty much the AD centuries, right? So the Roman Empire was really probably the last empire. Well, the Chinese was still going pretty strong at that time. But on the Western world, the Romans were probably the last empire before the British Empire took over. And there was several hundred years in between the fall of the Roman Empire and the start of the British. So in that time period, you have the age of castles, which is actually the age of kingdoms. Because after the collapse of the Roman Empire, then you started having all these little kingdoms sprouting up all over Europe, where the Romans, retreated out of Europe and everything. You're left with all these different little kingdoms here, there, and everywhere. And so they started building castles to protect, their particular part of the land. So we inject into that dragons and how the dragons are controlling the men and controlling people. And so the dragons are evil. In this case, dragons are evil. I'm not against dragons. Sometimes they'll be good, sometimes they'll be bad. But in this case, they're evil because they each vie for power and total control.
Yeah.
So dragons can't die, or not supposed to be able to die, but they can be killed by another dragon, or actually they're absorbed when the other dragon overtakes them.
So it makes them stronger then.
Right. Makes them stronger, and the other dragon ceases to exist on its own. It's going to exist as part of this dragon. And so the Ruby Cradle is how the mermaids force the dragon back into their elemental form. As they lose power, they shrink in size. And so they turn to like a ruby, a rock.
Yeah.
And they're trapped in that form. They can trap them in that form, away from sun, away from energy, away from anything that will provide them with strength, which will again let them grow.
Oh man! So they definitely hate each other because they did that then.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Well, the dragon, they can't get to the mermaid because the mermaid live in water.
Yeah. Oh man, that is crazy! Like, wow.
Oh. And in the middle of all that are people.
Yeah.
So in between the two vying for power is, of course, people.
So what is your writing process with, like, as you work on this story? Like, just whenever you can get to it? Like, because I know life is crazy.
No, I kind of like come to a point where I have all the ideas mapped out in my head because I'm a planner. So I plot everything. I have all my plot points written down. I have everything mapped out. And then when I get it to the point where, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to say and where I'm going, I start writing. And then I keep writing until I run out of ideas or I got that particular part written and I have to come back and start thinking about next. I usually get the whole idea plotted out somewhat. Like for the Ruby Cradle, I have the skeleton of the book written, which means I know what the storyline is going to be, and and how it's going to go, how the story is going to flow. And now I have to go back, and this is the hard part. I have to go back and fill in all the gaps.
Yes.
Fill in all the characters and flesh out everybody that's in the book to make them fully, full characters, full dragons, full personalities, mermaids, all of that. Excuse me. I'm going to have to take a little sip of this.
Oh, you're good. I saw your cat's ears poke up a second ago. That was so cute. Like, hey.
He's a pest. He's a pest.
Of course.
He's not even my cat.
Yes.
I have a cat and a dog. Neither one of them belongs to me. The cat belongs to my granddaughter. The dog belongs to my son. I don't think either one of them are coming back for them.
Oh. Well, they're good company, right?
They are good company. The dog is outside because I just got in from work. I jetted over here from work so I could be on the call. And the dog wouldn't go outside all day. This morning he wouldn't go outside. He barely got out of bed this morning. I'm like, well, I got to go to work, so you have to get up. If you don't get up, then I'm gonna leave you. And then I came home at lunchtime. I let him out, and now he's like, okay, now I'm ready. I want to go out. So I was like, good, because if not, he'd be over here making noise and everything. He's a big dog, so he'd be over here doing something.
Does he help you? Do they try to help you write sometimes, or just demand your attention away from the writing?
He doesn't really demand too much attention, so he's pretty good. He sits over here on his couch, and he just chills out while I'm sitting there writing. And every now and then, we'll have something to say, and I'll talk to him. And the cat will sit right here in my lap and get in the way. And then, if I'm trying to type, he might try to walk across the keyboards and stuff. And cats do because they like to type.
Oh, yes, yes. So, James, our final question for today. What is something that you've learned a lot, or maybe what is the biggest thing you feel like you've learned along this writer's journey?
I learned you need a good editor. Everybody should have a very good editor. And I have an excellent editor. She lives in South Africa. And no matter how good a writer you are, and I'm not saying I'm a good writer, but, I'm a horrible at grammar.
Yeah.
So I know that already. Grammar and me does not get along. So you can have all the wonderful ideas you want, but if you can't put them down or you can't express yourself and express yourself clearly, then, no one's going to know. And so finding a good editor and somebody who works with you, not somebody, because you have to find somebody who really knows what editing is about. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to rewrite your story. They're not trying to tell you how to write your story. They're just helping you clear up your story and help you find plot holes, because sometimes you have things in your head that you never put on the paper. And I'm also a programmer, computer programmer. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we learned in computer programming is peer reviews, because you write the program knowing what the program will do, mm-hmm. but you need a peer reviewer who's going to test your program to see if it doesn't break when it does things that it's not supposed to do.
Yes. Editors are absolutely they're lifesavers for any book or any author, I say. So, oh man. Well, James, thank you so much for jumping on and joining us today. Go ahead and tell everyone where they can snag a copy of your book and where you may be next, because you're going to be at Multiverse, right?
I don't think so.
You're not? Okay.
Yet. But what is Multiverse?
Multiverse is it's kind of the Multiverse convention in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's a lot of fun. Kind of keeps you busy. A lot of authors and everything. So, but I can't remember what weekend it's at off the top of my head. So, but yeah.
Okay. But they can find me at rockhillpublishing.com. And you can find me at JLHill, well, let's see, it's jlhill-books.com. And you can find me on like Facebook and places like that, Facebook, Instagram, all those other nice little, social media places. And of course, you can always look me up on Amazon and places. My books are everywhere. So you can find me anywhere. And the next place I'm going to be, I'll be at Killer Nashville in August. And that's a big mystery murder type of conference. So I'll be there. And here comes the cat. There you go.
Yep.
Now he's going to walk.
He's like, oh, you're done. I'm going to leave too now.
Yep.
Well,
So
thank you
goodbye.
again. Yes, thank you again. And everyone, thank you for watching. If you haven't hit that like button and subscribe, go ahead and do so. And we'll see you all soon. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to get future notifications when shows come out. Also, be sure to check out my website. I have a blog featuring this creative with some other fun and interesting questions. You can also subscribe to my newsletter there to stay up to date with all things the chapter goddess and Madilynn Dale. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great rest of the day.